Hello, everyone. My name is Sasha Latipova. I have a great guest today, Leslie Manookian. She's with Health Freedom Defense Fund, and she's going to speak to us about a very important lawsuit that's ongoing, or rather, petition to the Supreme Court about a very important case about having to do with health freedom. So, hello, Leslie.
Hi, Sasha. So great to see you.
Yeah, so can you give just a little bit of background of yourself and your fund and what you guys are doing, and especially why this case is so important?
Yeah. So I've been in the health freedom arena for a very long time. I first learned about the injection debate. I don't know if I'm supposed to say it or not, um, if we're being banned as much as we used to be, but I first learned about it in 2001, and that really sent me on a huge journey. I'd been working on Wall Street and thought that there was no downside to these injections. And then I learned that actually there was a really dark side to them, which shocked me. And I decided I was going to make a documentary film on them. And so I did that, and it came out in 2011, and it was called The Greater Good. And the reason I'm giving you that backdrop is because I started researching health and health freedom and all the laws that surround those issues back in 2001 and 2. And I started also researching the pharmaceutical industry and was shocked by what I found. Partly not as shocked as I would have been had I not had, I think you've heard me tell the story of the CEO who basically told me that he knew that his new drug was going to kill some people, but they'd make a ton of money. And so everything would be peachy. So all
Mhm.
those things, really helped to educate me, open my eyes, like seriously rip the veil. Maybe you could say red pill me. and and so I'd been doing all this research and work on this for a long time. And at the beginning of 2020, I knew exactly what they were planning. I was saying to my husband from the first few days of January, oh my gosh, it's finally here. They're going to
Mhm.
use some kind of a public health scare as a pretext for forcing injections on us and travel restrictions and all sorts of things. And he was like, oh, honey, don't be silly. It's not going to be that bad. And I was like, it's going to be bad.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so that is what spurred me to found Health Freedom Defense Fund. And so Health Freedom Defense Fund was officially founded in August of 2020, and we have filed over a dozen lawsuits since then. You may recall that we are the ones who struck down the CDC's travel mask mandate, so you don't have to
Yes.
wear a mask on an airplane, train, bus, or anything like that anymore because of our lawsuit. And we stopped the University of Chicago from not honoring religious exemptions to people who were applying for them during the
Mhm.
fall of 2020 and I think into 2021. And we've had, all sorts of cases. We've sued the federal government 4 times. We just stopped the federal government from requiring green card applicants from abroad to get the COVID shot. That happened last year. And we've sued the Los Angeles Unified School District twice, both times forcing them to stop their mandate. The first time it was of the EUA shot for all their employees. And the second time, which is now what we're appealing and we're going to talk about, they had to rescind their mandate of the supposedly approved shots. And that was after they got skewered in oral argument in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in the fall of 2023. But
Mhm.
now so that's my background. This is just something that I'm super passionate about because I'm actually jab injured myself. And
Mhm.
because I don't think there's anything more basic and fundamental than the right to choose what we put
Yeah.
into and on our bodies. And I just don't, I'm sick and tired of people who say where there's a risk, there must be a choice. No. How do you know what the risk is until you do it?
Uh-huh.
I am an N of one for every single medical intervention.
Yeah.
And no one knows what's best for me. No one knows my background. No one knows my history. And no one, most importantly, has to live with the consequences of my choices.
Mhm.
So no one gets to dictate them to me.
Mhm.
Anyway, so I'm super passionate about this issue. And that is what spurred me. And I also have a son
Mhm.
who's in his early 20s. And, I don't want him to be
Mhm.
subjected to the kinds of stuff that's happening in some of the states in this country.
Yeah, well, you've done an amazing job in Idaho, especially fighting for health freedom, and some of these things I've been involved with and continue being involved with. So, well, you guys are leading the nation really in Idaho with all the success of fighting for health freedom. So I'm hoping that this will, transferred to other places.
Well, let me tell you about that. I actually forgot. That is literally, aside from my son, my most, my kind of crowning joy, essentially. Um, April 5th of 20, sorry, April 4th of 2025, the governor of Idaho signed into law my bill, the Idaho
Mhm.
Medical Freedom Act, which prohibits medical mandates for all medical interventions for
Mhm.
almost all Idahoans. And it's not for all yet, but we hope
Yes.
to change that. We excluded the healthcare workers because we essentially had to get it over the finish line. But we are bringing a new bill this year, which will remove
Mhm.
that carve out. But so what happened was I got that bill through with huge support from legislators and my colleagues and sisters in this fight
Mhm.
at Health Freedom Idaho, Misty Carlfelt and Sarah Clendenin, who've just been and done an amazing job on the ground here in the state. And what I've just done in the last week or 10 days is now to partner up with Stand for Health Freedom to launch the Medical Freedom Act Coalition.
Mhm.
And we have pretty much every major medical freedom organization in the nation, excluding one or two, signed on, and we are singularly focused on one thing, and that is to bring the Medical Freedom Act to other states across the nation. So we
Yeah.
just announced it. I announced it on the Maha Hub last week, and I'm just so excited about it. We have, I don't know, like 14 organizations who are involved. Maybe it might be 15 now. And
Awesome.
we've created, so I work together with the Stand for Health Freedom team. They're a 501(c)(4), so they're going to basically lead on all of this
Mhm.
legislation because they can do that. We can't as a C3. We can, strategize and support, but
Mhm.
they're going to lead the effort. They have state directors and boots on the ground in 41 states.
Mhm.
We worked for basically from April until last week, the week
Mhm.
before last, to perfect the model bill based on the Idaho bill. There were certain things in the Idaho bill that I think could have been improved. And through consultation with all these different groups, we've created a model bill, which you can find on our website at healthfreedomdefense.org.
Mhm.
Click on resources and you'll see the model bill. You'll
Mhm.
see, and then you'll see two packages of information. So like a support kit, a toolkit for
Mhm.
the grassroots and how to do this in their state, and then a toolkit for legislators. But so
Mhm.
we perfected the bill, and now the Medical Freedom Act Coalition is all coming together to basically flex our collective muscle to ensure that we get this passed in as
Mhm.
many states as possible in the coming legislative session. So it is very exciting, and I'm
Yeah, I
super,
will put it in the links to this interview so that
yeah,
people
fabulous.
can, participate and help you out and try to
Yeah,
use it in your state. Yeah.
yeah. We've got, it's been introduced in Indiana already,
Uh-huh.
and we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 other states that are interested in bringing it and introducing it. And so that's in the, excuse me,
Oh, you muted.
I muted to block my clearing of my throat and then didn't unmute. So sorry. So basically, there are advocates in all these different states who are working together with their legislators to bring it in these other states. And the last I heard, it was something like 10 states. And I've
Excellent.
even heard, Sasha, that one of the provinces in Canada may be introducing it too.
Oh,
So,
that's amazing.
we breached the dam last year, right? That's
Uh-huh.
what we did. We showed that it can be done.
Yes.
And now this is the session that we are going to burst the dam open. That's the plan, right?
Absolutely. This is amazing. I'm so in awe of what you've been able to accomplish. And yeah,
Thank
I
you.
hope that my audience will participate in these activities and try to bring it into your state.
Yeah, let me say one other thing. People, like, I am in no way um, discounting the achievements that are being made at the federal level because there are achievements being made.
Hmm.
However, what most Americans don't understand is that health laws are state laws.
Yeah.
The reason that we were able to defeat the mask mandate was because CDC doesn't have the authority to tell millions of Americans across the country what to do.
Hmm.
They don't have that power. All of the health powers are part of what are called the police powers
Hmm.
in the Constitution, and they are reserved to the states. So
Hmm.
the only thing that it's allowed for to the federal government under the Constitution is what is expressly given to the federal government.
Hmm.
Anything that's not expressly given, like taxation, tariffs, war, all these kinds of things, not taxation, tariffs, though,
Hmm.
Those things are reserved to the states, and the health laws are part of the police powers, which are part of state law,
Hmm.
which is why the CDC can create a recommended schedule of injections, but not mandate them. The
Hmm.
states decide what they're going to do in their individual states. So the reason I'm sharing this is because it's imperative that people educate themselves about the way our system works and realize that the real kind of juice
Hmm.
is at the state level. This
Yeah.
is where we have to actually protect our rights.
Hmm.
And the other thing I would say, not to be cynical, but I mean, I kind of think the federal government's, I mean, a little bit of a lost cause, right?
It's a joke. It's quickly devolving into a joke, in my
It's a bit of
opinion.
a
Yeah.
morass. And the thing
Yeah.
is, they're all so conflicted, they're all bought, they're all controlled, or almost all of them, I should say. There are a few that I think are shining lights,
Hmm.
but it's very, very hard to get anything done there.
Hmm.
And but that said, if you live, especially if you live in a smaller state, these people live in your community, your representatives, your assemblymen, whatever you have, your legislators, senators and representatives, they live in your communities. You can see them, you can talk to them. They have to look you in the eyes after they make the decisions they've made. And this affords us a tremendous opportunity because they're
Hmm.
much more accountable to us than our congressmen and senators
Yeah.
and US congresspersons and senators. And this is a huge opportunity. And so when I was getting this legislation passed last year, when we were the team that I was working with, Sarah and Misty and everyone, I was hearing stories from legislators
Hmm.
about their own personal experiences with either COVID protocols
Uh-huh.
in the hospitals or COVID injections or all of these things. And so there are many more people out there who are awake than you realize.
Hmm.
And many of them are actually on our side. So
Yeah.
this is where we're going to get the work done. This is not only where we must do the work, but it's where we can do the work
Hmm.
because we actually have the backing of the law.
Yeah. Well, this is amazing. So let's talk about the Supreme Court, the main topic we were going to talk, the Supreme Court petition. Can you explain how this
Yeah.
works, what it is about?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, we've sued the Los Angeles Unified School District, LAUSD, twice.
Mhm.
The first time was in the spring of 2021, March of 2021. And after we sued because they were mandating the EUA for shot for their employees, they rescinded their mandate and said, oh, it wasn't really a mandate. It was, oh, they can test. It was kind of the next day they rescinded it.
Recommendation
Yes, exactly.
enforced with
It's amazing. They just literally rely on their belief, which has generally been true in the past, that no one's going to challenge them. They just didn't
uh-huh.
expect that there would be somebody like Health Freedom Defense Fund to come to the aid of these teachers
Uh-huh.
with phenomenal attorneys and tell them, sorry, but no, you can't do that.
Uh-huh.
So they rescinded it. And then they got the court to dismiss the first lawsuit in July of 2021 by telling the court that they did not have and were not intending to implement a COVID shot mandate.
Uh-huh.
17 days after they represented that to the court and the court dismissed the case, they implemented a new mandate.
Yeah, I'm going to tell Judge, I'm not going to commit a crime. 2 weeks later, I'm committing.
Well, now supposedly they'd been approved, so they would probably argue that they weren't committing a crime. But basically,
Uh-huh.
what happened was they did that, and so we sued them again. And now this case is our second case. And in this case, we argued not that they were EUA, but that they don't stop transmission or infection, and as such,
Uh-huh.
are a private medical matter under more than a century of Supreme Court jurisprudence, and they must be dealt with as a private matter. They cannot be mandated.
Uh-huh.
We also argued that natural immunity is real and that needs to be recognized by the courts,
Uh-huh.
and that the lawsuit under which these school district, LUSD, and others were claiming that they had the authority to mandate this was being wildly misconstrued and actually needed to be reconciled with more recent jurisprudence. So if you look at the last 60 years or so, there's been all sorts of Supreme Court precedent stating that you have a zone of privacy around you
Uh-huh.
into which the state cannot intrude.
Uh-huh.
And that's even gone further in more recent decades, saying that you have a liberty interest in refusing unwanted medical interventions, even if they might save your life.
Uh-huh.
So basically, there's all this Supreme Court precedent saying that the state doesn't have the power to tell you what to do, or at the very least, there's a balancing test between state authority in an extreme emergency and private liberty interests.
Mm-hmm.
And the case from 1905 called Jacobson versus Massachusetts
Uh-huh.
doesn't say that the state can force you to risk your life. It says if you think that your life could be at risk, you can actually get out of it.
Yeah, it just
That's what they
says
said. But
it. Yeah, the Jacobson. It's funny because I've written an article on the, well, tangentially related, but it's part of this case is prominent part of it. The water safety commission report in 1977 in the U.S. that established, it was written for the EPA, established all the community drinking water standards for safety. And it's a huge thing. It's like a 1,000-page report. But they have a historical note where they're mentioning this Jacobson versus Massachusetts. And turns out it was a huge fight at the time for health freedom in Massachusetts, because Massachusetts was implementing absolutely draconian mandates for smallpox vaccination, including police holding people down and force injecting people.
this is back in 1905,
In
in the
1905.
early 1900s. Yeah.
Yeah, in the early 1900s. And so there was a huge health freedom movement at that time. There were anti-vaccination league, there were other organizations who were fighting this, and
Yeah.
Jacobson was part of that.
Yeah.
And so all they could do is say, oh, well, okay, we can fine you $5 for non-compliance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Sasha, you know what most people don't understand? Jeffrey Tucker just wrote an article on this at Brownstone Institute. It is just fascinating. In 1902, there was something called like I forget what it was, the Biologics Act or something like that. And
Yes.
this,
Virus Toxin Act. Yeah.
the bio what?
A Virus Toxin Act that
Okay,
established biologics regulation. Yeah.
that was when industry first seriously asserted its power and effectively implemented a stranglehold on the political apparatus.
Yes.
It was never because the public was demanding vaccinations. That's never been the case.
Mm-hmm.
People have been revolting against them since the late 18th century when they were first causing carnage.
Yeah.
Um, you look back to, I think it was early 1800s when um, in England, they had been giving the smallpox shot for 5 years, and they had the biggest smallpox outbreak they'd ever had. And it
Mm-hmm.
was twice as deadly as it had been before.
Mm-hmm.
And so people have been revolting forever. Do you know that Abraham Lincoln, there was tons of people died when he told soldiers that they had to get it, the military that they had to
Mm-hmm.
get it, and then they had to back away from it. So this has been going on.
It's been,
The
yeah.
only reason that vaccines are being pushed on us is because in 1902, the industry was able to literally assert its power and basically
Mm-hmm.
start to control the political apparatus. It's never been because of public demand. It's never been because of demonstrated safety or efficacy. It's
Mm-hmm.
always been because of force.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's because of force. And another insidious, well, I haven't seen Jeffrey Tucker's article, but Catherine Watt wrote extensively about biologics regulation and Virus Toxin Act and even the legislation that preceded it. So that the Virus Toxin Act actually explicitly removes biologics from FDA regulation. Do you know that?
I did not know that.
So first of all, it precedes formation of FDA by 4 decades. It precedes FDA authority to ostensibly regulate biologics by 7 decades. So FDA only became in charge of regulating biologics sometime in 1972.
Hmm.
So that Virus Toxin Act basically says that facilities that make these preparations deemed biologics are regulated the same way the food facilities are regulated. They're licensed. It's like brewery or winery. You are
Unbelievable.
licensed based on cleanliness of your facility. The recipe, the composition of matter for a biologic, a true biologic, a nature-derived biologic, cannot be made because it's impossible to figure out what that composition. You can't patent a formula for wine.
No, it's a
So
fermentation process.
that's why you can't. So that's why the facilities are licensed to bottle it, to produce and bottle it. Nothing else is regulated, and that has been completely excluded. And now we have so-called synthetic biologics, which are 100% chemical drugs and
Oh my
can
gosh.
be defined on composition of matter. But the FDA, using their discretionary authority, says, "Well, no, they're biologics. They're part of nature. We can't possibly regulate them based on the composition of matter." So that's where we are right now with the mRNA shots. And that, by the way,
Gosh.
that's what our citizen petition with CHD actually defines and explains and gives a lot of evidence for, that these are not being regulated. They've never met even basic standard for any sort of regulation. And so that's why they should be deemed DUA. But I'm digressing. But yeah, this virus toxin act is hugely important. I'll
Yeah.
send you my
Yeah.
materials on that. You'll see.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Sounds good. So,
yeah.
so basically, this. So we sued LAUSD the second time. We
Mhm.
argued natural immunity, shots don't stop transmission or infection, and Jacobson does not apply because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't have a public health application because it doesn't stop transmission.
Mhm.
And so we lost in front of that same judge who got duped the first time. But
Mhm.
the judge didn't say this case has no merit. The judge said, absent further clarification from the Ninth Circuit, meaning guidance from a superior court, this court declines to create new law. I don't think it was new law. I don't
Mhm.
think it would have been new law. I think it would have been an accurate and appropriate interpretation of Jacobson, but the court declined to do that and dismissed the case. Well, we read it and we were like, this is crazy. This does not make any sense. The court is required to construe everything favorably to us the plaintiffs at this stage, and didn't do that. The court didn't even give us a chance. The court's basically just been
Mhm.
kind of abrogated its responsibility. And so we appealed to the Ninth Circuit and we won in front of a three-judge panel.
Mhm.
And in that panel, it was fantastic. They basically affirmed all of our arguments. But the school district then filed a petition with the Ninth Circuit for a broader panel called an en banc review. And
Mhm.
that was granted in March of 2025. And we had oral argument, and they overturned it July 31st of last year. But here's the important thing, okay? So we walked out of oral argument on March 18th feeling like elated. It had
Mhm.
gone so well for us. We thought for sure we had 7 or 8 of the 11 judges. And we were like just fired up. Our two attorneys and myself, we were the ones who were present for us. LAUSD had 5 attorneys there. They were literally like this. Their heads were hung low, and they clearly felt terrible about it. Well, very strangely, 3 months later, the ruling is issued,
Mhm.
and which is strange because those rulings had been taking 9 to 12 months, and this one only took 3 months,
Uh-huh.
which is very strange. Okay, so the rapidity of it. But the other thing is that there were 8 judges who agreed to vacate the 3-judge panel, and they but there was not a single one wrote a concurrence. Usually a judge will write a concurrence if they believe they want to
Mhm.
be on the record saying, hey, this is really great and I really agree with this and this is another reason or perspective on it. No one wrote a concurrence. 3 judges dissented in part. One judge dissented and said that the case was moot because the Ninth Circuit en banc panel found that the case wasn't moot, which is what
Mhm.
we'd argued, and LAUSD had been trying to get rid of it as it being moot for years. And then 2 judges partially dissented. They agreed that the case wasn't moot with the majority, but they said that the ruling that they had issued was absurd because it opened the door to basically limitless state power at a time when they should have been constraining state power
Yeah.
because there was so much evidence of wrongdoing. So
Yeah.
the majority wrote, Sasha, this is just shocking.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter whether or not the COVID shots stopped transmission and infection. All that matters
Mhm.
is that a state official could have believed that the shots would help individuals.
It's
Not
um
even public health,
uh-huh.
no facts, no judicial review, no proof, no evidentiary proof,
Yeah.
nothing.
Uh-huh.
It's just as long as somebody in the state apparatus believes it can help you, then the state is
You must
authorized to do
inject
that.
poison.
But this is like, I mean, Sasha, this is like insanity, right?
It
Because
is. Yeah.
this does a few things. First of all, the Ninth Circuit itself had issued previous rulings that said that Jacobson required a balancing test. Now they're saying that Jacobson provides limitless power and authority to the state to just do what it wants and negates the possibility of judicial review. The courts need not, in fact, may not get involved as long as public health is claimed. So that's terrifying. It also contradicts the Supreme Court and all the Supreme Court precedent going back for a very long time, including Jacobson. Jacobson did not say
Uh-huh.
that the state shouldn't get involved. That's not what it said at all.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. But the third and most important thing, and this is why we're petitioning SCOTUS for a review, is that they have basically said that the state that you are a slave and that the
Yeah.
state can dictate whatever it wants,
Hmm.
essentially, as long as it claims public health. So this should terrify all Americans, irrespective of where they stand on the political spectrum. And let me
Yeah.
give you a few, if you want, I'd love to unpack this a little bit more and give
Hmm.
you a few examples because it's just shocking where they could take this, Sasha.
Yeah. Well, because first of all, public health is not health, but everything can be claimed as public health. Absolutely everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So here are a couple examples, okay? So let's just say that there's some kind of a public health emergency, claimed public health emergency in 2027, and President Trump decides that everybody needs to mandate ivermectin. Can you
Hmm.
imagine
Hmm.
how repugnant that would be to a good chunk of the country?
Hmm.
And he doesn't just, he can't mandate it. So he says, I want all the states to mandate it. And if you don't mandate it, I'm going to cut off discretionary funding for X, Y, and Z programs in your
Hmm.
states, which is what he does all the time, right?
Yeah.
And he's perfectly empowered to do that.
Hmm.
So you either do this or else we're going to cut off this discretionary funding.
Hmm.
And then, so all the people who think that ivermectin is horse paste and a veterinary drug will be freaking out because they're going to be forced to take it by their state
Hmm.
if this ruling stands.
Hmm.
Here's another great, crazy one. What if at some point in the not too distant future, it is deemed that we have a population problem, that the population is stagnating because the birth rate is too low, like it is all over Europe and lots of places like Japan, where the replacement rate is well below
Hmm.
the death rate. So
Hmm.
you look, the populations are collapsing in lots of Western Europe. You need at least two births
Uh-huh.
for every couple. It's, I think, actually like 2.2 or something like that to
Yeah.
actually make sure, because of then people, people dying and things like this. Um, let's just say the birth rate is too low, and they declare that there is a public health disaster because of the declining population, that it threatens the overall structure and health of our system.
Hmm.
And they decide that anyone under the age of 35, any female under the age of 35, has to act as a surrogate.
Yeah.
Yes, act as a surrogate in order to ensure that we avoid collapse of American society. These
Hmm.
are the kind of things that could happen. Or let's just say, that people are depressed because they can't pay their bills and inflation's high and they're losing their jobs and they're being replaced by AI and all these kinds of things. Well, you know what? We are going to insist that everybody takes Zoloft or Lexapro or I don't know, some antidepressant, right? Something like this. Or what if your employer says, you're not really very efficient,
Hmm.
and all of you employees at LAUSD, we're a little bit concerned that productivity is lapsing, and so we're going to mandate Ritalin.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, but that's exactly what the LAUSD would love to do because they are paid by, they're paid by big pharma, paid by, and that's what they would love to do. They would love to mandate Ritalin. They would love
Yes.
to mandate
Yeah.
all kinds of drugs because, it creates money for the pharmaceutical industrial complex.
100%.
So,
But can you, I mean, think about this. So it's like,
yeah,
here's this huge spectrum of potential outcomes that
yeah.
affect all Americans and clearly should be concerning to all Americans. And
Hmm.
I just don't think, I mean, so we basically, we submitted it on, I think it was December 23rd, and I think it was docketed on the 29th of December
To the Supreme Court.
to the Supreme Court. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's this whole formal process, and I think it was actually docketed, so like stamped on the 29th of December
Hmm.
by the court as received. And so now there's 30 days from that point for LAUSD to answer,
Hmm.
and then we get another reply to that.
Hmm.
And I really very strongly, I know our attorneys would probably not be happy for me to say this, but I really think they're going to take it. I really do, because if they
Hmm.
let it stand, it opens the door to crazy things, crazy outcomes, number one. And number two, if they let it stand and it's already being cited in other cases
Hmm.
as justification to reject any challenges relating to public health issues.
Hmm.
Okay. So it's already being used as precedent now.
Yeah.
If they allow it to stand, it means that they are allowing their decades of jurisprudence saying that you have a liberty interest in refusing unwanted medical interventions to basically be swept aside.
Uh-huh.
So I don't see how they can not take it. I really don't.
Yeah, it will be very interesting. I mean, yeah, I'll send you my materials on the Virus Toxin Act. And there's another act of Congress which was passed so this is why they use the word public health, in my opinion. This is what Catherine Watt found in her research when she went back to the 1700s, tracing all the vaccine law, related law. In 1850, I believe, there was an act of Congress that said something like the Secretary of Treasury of the United States, at that time there was no HHS, the Secretary of Treasury has unlimited powers. He can do whatever he wants to do to prevent the spread of communicable disease. That's that's the foundation on which all this was built. All this public
Mhm.
health was built, because that was the first time they said Constitution doesn't apply. Well, the second time, first time in time of war, deployment of the military on the U.S. soil, and the second is under these guises of public health. So that's, I think, is something that needs to be reviewed more closely. Like, and then since then, the Treasury delegated that to HHS when it was formed. And by the way, that's why confirmation hearings for RFK Jr. was in the Finance Committee, not the Health Committee. That's because of that.
Well, but the Senate was in the Health Committee, but yes, in the Health Committee. But let me
Mhm.
just say, I thought that there was some other act
Mhm.
in the 1800s that allowed these mandates, but it was rescinded 15 years or 13 years afterwards, later, after it was implemented, because
Mhm.
so many people died and were
Well, it
injured.
wasn't the mandates for the vaccines or anything.
It
It
was
was
just
a very broad
the
decision by Congress.
structure.
Yeah, structural decision by Congress saying that because we want to prevent the spread of so-called communicable disease, which is complete nonsense, we give Secretary of Treasury essentially unlimited powers to do whatever he pleases under this rubric, right?
Yeah.
So it's something worth reviewing and seeing exactly what it said and how it was later misused, because
Hmm.
this is what it's kind of like those magic words, national security, right? Which is not defined anywhere in law. And by the way,
No.
public health is also, there is no legal definition of what is and isn't public health.
Yeah.
It's
Totally.
totally. So it's like, it's absolutely in the eye of the beholder. Like whatever I claim is public health.
Yeah. But I think that, because of the ascension,
Hmm.
wrongly in my view, of modern medicine,
Hmm.
um, and because of the indoctrination of the public for a century about medicine, there has been this conflation of public health with personal health.
Yes.
Public health should be about the commons. It should be about clean air and clean water and keeping garbage and refuse and effluents out of the
Hmm.
waterways and the commons.
Hmm.
That's what public health should be focused on. And if you look at the Public Health Services Act of 1942, it specifically says that CDC is charged with monitoring, inspecting, disinfecting, fumigating animals and articles,
Hmm.
not human beings, animals and articles brought into the country or transported across state lines.
Hmm.
But what's happened in the intervening years is that this has been wildly misconstrued to mean that it can intrude into your personal private matters, your
Hmm.
personal private health. And that's just wrong.
Yeah.
And we just need to keep remessaging. And that's one of the other things that the Medical Freedom Act Coalition is going to do, is to help spread the word
Hmm.
about what truly is public health and what truly is private health, because my personal medical choices belong to me and me alone. That's
Hmm.
not public health. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with public health.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they did, the scope creep, right? So also public health, traditionally, what is meant by this, it's a data gathering exercise. Fundamentally, it's the data gathering exercise for disseminating this information and making better decisions for the locations. So the
Yeah.
CDC's role is to collect the data about water quality, air quality, other things. It may be incidents of various kinds of diseases. It's useful to have this information and then disseminate to the states so that the states can decide, about whether something constitutes a danger or not. But again, they can't intrude in the personal, individual decisions about their body, especially. So,
I see. Yeah, I see it as I think that there's another perspective on it as well, which is even more alarming, which is that um, I want to say this in a not sensational way, but basically, the federal government recognizes they know that they can't intrude into public health in the states, that that's the purview of the state legislatures. So what have they done? Well, they have used the federal agencies,
mhm,
health agencies, as a backdoor. So
mhm,
if you look at swine flu, $6 or $7 billion to promote swine flu
mhm,
shots was
mhm.
distributed to the state health departments in
Yeah,
2009. So what they're doing is they are bribing the
yeah,
state apparatuses with federal funds, with our tax dollars, in order to do their bidding because they know that they can't do it directly. That's one piece of it.
absolutely.
Then
Yeah.
there's something called it's called NACHO, the National Association of City and County Health organizations, I think, or health offices.
Yeah.
And basically, there again, money being funneled through CDC to these organizations in order to push CDC's policies. And
Yeah.
then you look at what happened in 2001. So this is something I've spoken about at length elsewhere. In 2001, right after the Patriot Act was introduced and signed, the Model State Emergency Health Powers Act legislation was introduced.
Mhm.
Now, this legislation has been passed in whole or in part in more than 40 states. Last time I checked, it was 43. Here's what it does. In the event of a public health scare, a public health emergency, it transfers extraordinary powers to state governors and
Mhm.
state health departments.
Mhm.
So basically, it's this massive power grab that started amongst the all the fear after 9/11 in order to usher in this new paradigm where the
Mhm.
medical establishment, the medical edifice, right, the medical industrial complex in this country usurps more control of our daily lives. And so this
Mhm.
has been going on for a very long time. But if you look at what's just happened in the last 25 years, it's quite extraordinary. I mean, had they not had that,
Mhm.
the governors and the health departments couldn't have done what they did during COVID. It was
Yeah.
the,
It's
you
it's
know,
all based on money. People somehow think that these people truly believe that and maybe to some extent the people truly believe that there is a virus and it's dangerous and so forth. But nobody would mask toddlers and force mask toddlers in schools if they were not paid millions of dollars to do so. And they are paid millions. Actually, I've written an article on the money flows from the federal government to the state officials to enforce CDC recommendations. This is again how they don't have the power to actually regulate practice of medicine in the states, but they use bribery to enforce whatever they want to enforce. And in response to that, many people commented. So in one of the states, I forget which one exactly, but I think it's similar everywhere. The health department employs and there's an office of vaccine propaganda. And so that person alone is paid $26,000 a month just to push vaccine propaganda from CDC at the state level. That's just the public health board or public health office of a state, right? So and there are thousands of people like that employed. Their sole job is to push that propaganda. So they don't care. They absolutely not care about immunity, science, medicine. No, it's all about money.
think about all the PSAs that were put out in the States during, I mean, for years, they were lying, saying
Yeah.
that, the shot's the best way to prevent infection. It's just not true. It was
Which
a
is not
complete,
true, but they
but they were
paid to
using,
they paid so much money. Like, why would they say anything else?
yeah, yeah. It's incredible. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so basically coming full circle. So we filed this petition. I'm super excited about it,
Mhm.
and I feel I hope everybody holds us in their prayers and makes a stink. Please follow us on social media and
Mhm.
start sharing our. Let me just say, the Medical Freedom Act Coalition has so many organizations in it. It's got CHD, Stand for Health Freedom, Feds for Freedom, Citizens Council for Health, Maha Action and Institute, Brownstone Institute. Um, there's more
Mm-hmm.
than a dozen, and I cannot remember them all now, and I can't remember what I just said.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mary Talley Bowden has just joined.
Excellent.
Um, there have been so many of these organizations, and I'm sorry to all the ones who've joined, and I'm forgetting who it is, but it's a long list. Um, Please, look at our press release that's on our website and
Okay.
follow all those organizations and help spread the word because what we need to do. So I think that COVID shifted the Overton window on
Mm-hmm.
one, trust in public health agencies, and two, on jabs in general.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm trying to do, what is my mission, is to try and shift the Overton window on the whole notion of medical freedom,
Mm-hmm.
that it's the most basic and fundamental of human rights, that we and we alone get to make these choices for ourselves, free of any kind of coercion or pressure or penalty.
Yeah.
And and so we're creating all these messages to put out there on social media. And so if you will share these and help us to shift the Overton window further on this, this also helps our case because as they say, politics are downstream from culture. Well, so are the courts.
Yes.
Think about it. It took a long time before gay marriage was considered acceptable. And it was because the culture shifted. And that's what then allowed the court to do what
Mm-hmm.
it did. So these kinds of things are really important. And I think that the more that we stand up and we say, sorry, but no, you don't get to tell me what to do,
Mm-hmm.
then it helps this cause entirely, like in a
Mm-hmm.
kind of bigger, in a meta perspective.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. I don't want to hold you up any longer, but I will put the links in and I will direct people to the press releases and the ways to support you on your website.
Thank you so much for having me, Sasha. Always good to see you and be with you.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Okay, let me.
So you got two announcements. Isn't that great?
So hold on. Stop recording.